Greetings, my friend, and welcome back to my game room. This week I'd like to tell you a little bit about a game that is over 100 years old, was in production for many, many years with a lot of variations over the years, and spawned a couple of other games as well along the way. It goes back to the turn of the century, and by that I mean the previous century, back at 1900. There was a craze that was fast replacing bicycles on the roads of the Western world, and that was called the automobile. And those who were the well-to-do of society had their motor cars, and they liked to go out touring on the weekends and show off their cars and see the sights and scare the horses and pedestrians along the way. Of course, anytime that there is a popular craze, the game publishers get in on that as well. And in the case of touring the countryside in your motor car, if the weather was inclement or you didn't have enough time to don your driving gear and gas up the old jitney, you could enjoy the thrill of touring the countryside in your own parlor with a classic card game. There had been board games about travel before, seeing the sights of the world, the seven wonders, visiting exotic places, making a circuit of different countries. Now it was all about the motor car. And that's when they came out with the game called Touring. Now there was a prolific inventor at the time whose name was William Jansen Roche, and he invented this card game that we came to know as Touring. The simple challenge in the game is to complete a trip of a certain number of miles. In 1906, when the Touring Card Game Company first published the game, it caught on like wildfire, and within just a matter of years, it was picked up by another company called the Wally Door Company. That was the guy's name. It's not that they manufactured doors. But they published the game out of New York, and again, it was a very popular game and found its way into stores and catalogs all across the country. They continued to refine the game and improve upon its artwork and quality of the packaging and so on, and updated it to the new decades. And when 1924 came around, the folks at Parker Brothers took notice and they said, hey, we need this in our catalog. And so Parker bought it in 24, and they changed the artwork once again to update it to the 1920s. There were a few competitors, of course, anytime you've got a successful product. But they also followed some of the other crazes. In the 20s, of course, there was aircraft. Charles Lindbergh made his solo flight across the Atlantic, and that inspired a lot of different games, books, toys, etc. And so the new craft toy company came out with the Lindy game. It was essentially the same type of a game to see who could make it across the Atlantic by playing cards in the same way as Touring. And Parker Brothers, of course, had their own airplane version of the game. Now, in 1954, a Frenchman named Edward Dujardin, actually his name was Arthur, his pen name was Edmund, he created a game called Mille Bournes. We're probably all familiar with that one. It kind of gave Touring a run for its money, so to speak, because they changed the balance of the game quite a bit, streamlined some of the player interaction, made it less likely that you would be stuck with a hand of cards you couldn't play. And so therefore this streamlined version caught on in popularity through the 50s, and it's found its way into America and other countries around the world. And all the toy stores had Mille Bournes on the shelves now next to Touring. People, of course, wonder what Mille Bournes means. It means 1,000 mile markers. They're not actually mile markers, it'd be kilometer markers, but that's basically what it is. You're trying to complete a journey of 1,000 kilometers is what the theme of the game is. And Parker Brothers were watching all this happen, and they said, you know, this is actually a better game than Touring. So Touring kind of fell out of their catalog in the 1960s. I believe, in fact, that the last version that Parker published was about 1966 or thereabouts. So by 1976, Parker Brothers had licensed Mille Bournes and put that into their catalog in place of Touring, and it became a staple for Parker's catalog for another few decades. Now let's take a minute to kind of go over the contents of the box and talk about the rules a bit. I'm going to use my own version here, which is from 1957. They are all pretty much the same, so what I describe here is probably going to apply. So this is the box. It's not in the greatest of shape. Somebody put some tape on the end of it here at the thrift shop where I bought it. But the cards are a very typical design with the countryside depicted here in green. And they used this design for quite a few years for the cards. And then on the other side, this is the 1940s artwork. There's a lot of overlap between the packaging design and the card designs, always evolving. Now curiously, in this particular game, the rules are folded up here, and these are copyright 1947, even though the package is 1957. And it's obviously made to be folded in half, but they folded it in thirds and then again to fit the card slot in the box. Clever? So the deck consists of 99 cards. Now that includes mileage cards, 5, 15, 25, 45 miles. The go card obviously lets you go. City limits and country cards, which regulate your speed. You can go faster in the country, farther in the country than you can in the city. The collision card, out of gas, and punctured tire cards, which are mitigated by the hauled in card, which means that your damaged vehicle is being taken into the garage to be fixed. Out of gasoline, of course, you buy gasoline. Puncture card assumes you fix it on your own, and all it needs to get beyond the puncture is another go card. So there's not really a solution card for that particular circumstance. Now there are some adjustments in the deck for a 3-player game, and the rules state that if you're playing with 4 or 6 players, that you should play teams. There are no rules whatsoever for a 5-player game, but that kind of intimates to me that it's really designed as a 2-player game. It would be interesting to play the teams, though. 2 players is the only way I've ever played it. This particular version of the game, your goal is to make a trip of 250 miles. That is to get your mile cards that add up to 250. Of course, you can't start until you get a go card that allows you to actually start your journey. And these bad cards, these hazards, they actually call them delay cards, are played on opponent's go card. That means they can't go until they have resolved that situation with the proper card and played another go card on top of that stack that allows them to continue. Each player receives a hand of 4 cards, and then you just begin to play into your tableau, or you play the delay cards onto the opponent's cards. This is what the tableau looks like. This would be my tableau, or me and my partner. There's the draw deck and the discard deck for cards you don't want in your hand, don't want to play for whatever reason. The splayed cards here for mileage, that's kind of the traditional way to keep track so that you can see how much your mileage is in any given time fairly easy. This is the go stack over here, which changes as people play hazards on the go stack here, and you always have to have a go on top in order to play more mileage cards. The country card goes in a separate little stack. That allows you to play the higher mileage cards to your tableau from your hand. But another player can play a city limits card on there, which means now you're in a city and you can't play the 45s while that card is on top. So you have to play another country card in order to speed up again and be able to play the 45s. You don't lose them, but you just can't play more. And then back to the city limits again, that will come from an opponent. So you've got to kind of keep track of what your opponents are up to as you play the game. So I said before, the go card is the most important one. There's lots of them in the deck, so they do come round to keep you on the road. But that's the way it sets up, and eventually you'll end up with your 250-mile goal. Whoever reaches that first wins the game. That's really about all there is to it. Now, as you would expect, there are variations in play. In fact, they publish a few variations in the rule book under the heading Improve the Game. So the idea is that once you've experienced the game and you're familiar with the rhythm of it and so on, you can introduce some of these new rules. And these appear on the cards themselves in the fine print, as you see here. The improved game is a little more cutthroat, and the challenge is a bit more intense. In 2014, the Winning Moves company took over the license for touring, and they updated it yet again and turned it into more of a road rally game with modern cars and modern mileages, and changed the hazards just slightly. Updated it with bold, attractive colors and really appealed to the modern mass market. And it was a good implementation of the game, but it didn't last too long on the shelves, and it's out of print again now. I wanted to find a copy of the Winning Moves version specifically for this video, but also for my collection in general, and there's pretty much sold out. I can find listings here and there, but there's not a lot of them out there on the market. So if you find a copy of that Winning Moves version, grab it. Personally, though, being a nostalgic sort, I kind of like to play the older versions of the game. Just kind of brings back that excitement of piling the family into the family truckster and taking off on a tour of the West or whatever it might happen to be. Or even the older sets, which hopefully one of these days I'll be able to add one to my collection that actually has the horseless carriage type of theme to it. Touring is really kind of the granddaddy of the entire genre. Claims to be the very first motor car themed game. Don't know if that's really true, but it definitely enjoyed many years of publication. So whether you're traveling in your own horseless carriage on the highways and byways of the Western world, or if you're in your parlor playing that card game around the table, I want you to remember to be sure to play every day.